Hello, everyone. We're happy to have you here with us again for Founder Problems. My name is Zach Oshinbanjo. I'm your resident friendly neighborhood veteran. And today we're going to be exploring how you can move about turning disasters into actual opportunities. And I'm joined by my co-host, Lee and Sarah.
I'm Lee Zuvanich, and I own a couple of businesses that involve helping founders take their tech projects to market.
I'm Sarah Schumacher, and I run a website agency where most of my time I spend squashing lots of bugs, hopefully.
So today's episode is going to be largely centered around that disaster can be okay. I know that may seem like a very controversial statement, particularly with the state that we're in and the way that things are going. The challenge that I have for you today is that you don't have to sit and just let things happen. There's an opportunity or a silver lining, if you will, to be able to gain some value from the way that things went. Because sometimes things are simply disasters. I'm not trying to refute undeniable logic. Things sometimes just suck. This is more the opportunity to leverage what you learn in each of those experiences or as things happen. An excellent case, very timely in the sense of it just happened last week. I was working on some grant and government opportunities. I needed some information. The entire application window is 4 weeks. I asked a question in the first week. They didn't answer for 3 weeks, leaving me 4 days to actually put together a cohesive proposal. It was crunch time scramble. I started throwing pitches, trying to get a team together, but in 3 days, I found somebody who has a background relevant to the solicitation. I found a guy who works on artificial intelligence research, and they both said, you know what, you're giving us 2 days notice. We don't know you, but hey, you sound like a swell guy. And they agreed to join. The silver lining is I was that close to just throwing out the entire opportunity because I only had such a small amount of time to do it. But I ended up finding 2 people who, on the surface and through some of our hour-long conversations and numerous emails, they seem like really great people. Wow, if I would have knew these people a long time ago, I would have been way further along in this process. The post-failure storytelling is probably the most important. What you tell yourself or as you reason through failure is critical because it's helps you to create kind of your own bubble or your own perimeter to how you actually went through the situation because it helps you recover towards your next opportunity. And one of the things that I found is opportunity recognition. And that's the process that's been identified in some people who have strong entrepreneurial drive. Those people find the wedge or the crack. If they're facing a seemingly insurmountable task, they can find that little crack or that pivot point and they can adjust. Being able to adapt and move towards those opportunities is super important. Last little piece here, because I'm just barraging information. There's a difference, particularly in business owners and founders, of trying to understand your narrative comfort level and your actual progress. One of the things that founders and business owners can find themselves doing is providing themselves comfort with a narrative, even if that narrative isn't true. An excellent example would be if I build it, they will come. That narrative, you're just in your garage cranking away at some wheelless bike, some weird thing that's probably not gonna market. You're like, it's not time yet. If I do it, people will think it's cool. The safety blanket or the opportunity to comfort yourself, it feels good. But let me tell you, you're gonna waste a lot of time trying to explore that path. So I think it's really important to actually line that up with actual progress. So if you are in your garage making a wheelless bike and somebody across the street says, I want a wheelless bike, you have actual opportunity and you should go for it. So I think that's something to be cognizant of for any business owner, any startup founder, anybody trying to start something, is to notice and acknowledge the difference. From there, are there any stories or any kind of happenings from either of your lives that you can relate to for this subject?
Man, well, one thing I wanted to highlight really quick before I forgot is that you're having to put together a proposal that quickly. It might be crazy, but at the end, you're like, now I know I can do that. So I think that's kind of an added advantage. It sucks. You don't want to have stuff dumped on you last minute, but once you've done it, it makes everything else seem more reasonable because if it's a normal time frame, you're like, well, I got that done in 3 days. I can definitely get this done in 2 weeks. So
Well, and I don't know why, but when you said survivorship bias, I wasn't sure I knew what the definition was. Like I've heard it, but I just couldn't bring to mind a real definition related to silver lining. So I looked it up, and the internet says survivorship bias occurs when researchers focus on individuals, groups, or cases that have passed some sort of selection process while ignoring those who did not. And one example of that is paying attention to a few wealthy and famous tech entrepreneurs who left college before completing their degrees while ignoring the many people who have dropped out of college and then not been able to go find a career in maybe the profession that they wanted to. So when you say we need to talk about survivorship bias with regard to startup failure, I think that there's a lot of that in this community. And like you said, we generate these stories because it helps protect our minds as we fail and fail and fail forward. It can actually be like a part of resilience to be able to pivot and say failure is part of success. But on the flip side of that is sometimes failure is just failure. So yeah, unpacking which, I think is probably a lifelong journey. It's pretty complex.
It goes back to the apocryphal founder. Somebody can say that,
Mhm.
man, I didn't have any money, but I canned Spam for 2 years and now I'm doing really well. Everybody isn't gonna be in a situation where they can go through this trying and very difficult time or go knock on 30 doors and somebody will say yes. I mean, maybe that's just you're focusing. I think people have this mental state where we like to focus and highlight all the positivity and all the good things that can happen, which is fine because you don't want to be a Debbie Downer or just like really negative about everything. But I think you have to come at it with clear lenses and clear frames. Is like,
Mhm.
is this something that's actually possible? The number of people who go through YC, I don't know, it's like 1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Like 4 actually go through funding, actually raise, and do all the things that are seen as metrics of success in comparison to the thousands that come in there with an idea and it just doesn't work out.
Mm.
One of the other things that I want to highlight is there's stuff that you don't know about or that they don't talk about or that they omit. For even the survivor stories that you hear, 97% of businesses will fail. And
Yeah.
no one's talking about the 97%. They're talking about the 3%, which is the survivorship bias. But on top of that, they're not always telling you the whole story. Amazon, he got $250,000 from his parents to start that business. Most of the businesses I know do not have access to that kind of money. We don't hear those stories in full context, so we miss some of the resources that those people have that we don't have. Oh, a great example of this is the time thing. There's some meme or something I've seen going around where it's like Beyoncé has the same amount of hours in her day as you do. That's not true, because when you are at a certain level of income, you can pay for nannies and personal chefs, and you have more time than most people because you can outsource so much of your life. Cleaning, pay someone to clean your house, right? That most people are not afforded. So the hours are not equal. And I think that's another thing that's left out is the opportunities are different, and sometimes you don't see that behind the scenes stuff. We were talking earlier about making up stories after the fact about some of these things. Hindsight's 2020 thing, right? But I think there's a lot of value in the moment also being able to try to find those things. I can look back at stuff and be like, "Oh, wow, that situation really, really sucked." But also, I learned this, this, and this. And it's easier to do now. But the resilience, I think the key of being resilient, which is so important for being a founder, is being able to do that in the moment. When the thing happens, instead of being like, "Oh, this is the worst," and then maybe 10 years down the road, you're like, "Turns out that was actually pretty good." It's about being able to do that now and being like, "Oh, yeah, this sucks." But I was running a business on the side and I was working full time. And when I got laid off, I had so much work that week, side work. I had the full magazine to design and get into print and oversee and other projects. And I was like, how the heck am I going to get all this stuff done this week? This is going to be crazy because I'm working full time. Then I got to go home and work more and all these things. And that was the week I got laid off. And I was like, well, I can get all my projects done now. A perfect example of finding the silver lining in that particular situation and being like, yep, I don't know if I would be able to get it all done. It would have been really stressful. So that was that's a great example of that. And then it ended up me becoming a full-time entrepreneur at that point, because that was
Nice.
also what led me to, being like, "Nope, now it's time to run my business full-time instead of doing this on the side." So that's my practical example of what that would look like for finding a silver lining.
Yeah, I have so many stories that I think are all that classic Hollywood setup of loss and tragedy and then great things coming out of it just over and over again. The first real business that made me realize I was actually a true business owner. I had already started a nonprofit, but it was more like a co-op with friends, and I was 19 and didn't really see like what that was or what it meant. But then I got married, and then my ex left me, and I had an 8-month-old and a 1-year-old and rent due and no money and no degree and no savings, no family that could help me really. Just was here on my own in Kansas City, and I started a home daycare, and I was able to pay my bills on time, and it took off, and I did really well and got to stay home with my kids for years and realized through that I was a real entrepreneur, and ended up after a while shutting it down and opening a yoga studio because that's what I was more passionate about. And that did really well. And none of that would have happened. And that would not have led me to where I am today, owning a tech business and loving being an entrepreneur, if my ex had not left me unexpectedly and caused me to become a broke single parent that had to get scrappy real quick. So I have a lot of stories like that, a lot of silver linings. And now when I'm going through something really difficult, I look back over a long past 20 years now of ups and downs, and every single massive loss always precluded just the most amazing upswing later. What I've learned from that is not that life is magical and that God opens a door, and it's like not necessarily that. It's that I can count on myself because I always find a way forward. And not to say that my community doesn't help me or that I'm not building on a lifetime of privilege and lessons, but it gets easier every time. And I've proven to myself that I will work really hard until the bills get paid and my kids are going to be okay. And I'm going to be able to buy a house or put them in private school or pay for their medical needs or whatever it is. I'm going to be able to do it. I've always done it before. And so all of those tragedies, their silver linings are I learned how to be really resilient and trust myself and be a strong parent and entrepreneur. So now it's almost like I can forecast this mental image of the next silver lining when something bad happens. And that really helps me stay resilient.
I definitely think that's a practice that you can learn and you can teach yourself. I have a very pessimistic person in my family. It's the kind of person to be like, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist, but they're just a pessimist. And
They just
which is
shit
just,
on everybody all the time.
yeah, exactly. It's just very obnoxious. And so as a reaction to that, I have trained myself very intentionally to see silver linings in things. It is a practice that I have cultivated my entire life and I'm very good at now. So you can teach yourself to do that, to where it is just a way of seeing things. I'm also extremely hyper independent too. So part of it is just like, well, I'm going to figure this out now. There's always something you can find if you have that mental mindset. But I think it's important to highlight that you can cultivate that. Even if you don't have it now, even if you don't know what that looks like, even if you've never seen an example of it, you can be very intentional about changing the lens that you view the world in. And if you do that over time, it will become second nature.
Yeah, there's definitely an art form and in being able to objectively look at if there's an opportunity or something good can happen. I think one of the most critical skills that you can develop in that area is being able to separate the emotion from the analysis. Say you do a pitch competition, you'd never pitched before, you're like trembling, you're nervous to do it. The opportunity or the event that you got up there and you were able to pitch is eye-opening and revealing about your own qualities and characteristics in itself. One of my first pitch competitions, there was a room of 100 or so people. It was just 3 minutes. No written, no context. You just go out and talk for 3 minutes about your business. And I think people gravitate towards when they can feel authenticity. If you go up there and you're just putting on this big top hat, like this whole routine, you're doing a bit, sometimes I feel like people could perceive that as a natural.
Mm.
I went up there and I think I almost tripped up the stairs. My voice was wavering. And I think I got 30 seconds into what I was talking about. I was like, this is hard. I just said that. And there was a resounding receptive from the audience. Yeah, I know. Keep on going. So it was just,
Support.
you guys are just regular people. So anyways, this is my business. And I felt so comfortable and able to continue my presentation. It was being able to separate after the fact, the emotional part of it is like, man, I went up there. I was so nervous. I'm never getting on the stage again. Then the analysis I had was like, oh, people like when you're authentic. Just talk, don't teleprompter it. Just be genuine. People will be more receptive to that. Another very similar instance that I had, I was like speech or writing 101 or whatever when I was working on my degree. Everybody had to come up and do an unscripted 5-minute talk about just whatever. You couldn't prepare it. I was just sitting in the back, getting all clammy, getting nervous, started feeling a little woozy. I was like, whew, I gotta get out of here. So I ran out. I'm like leaning in the hallway, and then I just like, I mean, what's the worst that happens, Zach? You go in there, you fall over. Somebody will, somebody will either pick you up or drag you out of the classroom. So you'll just get over it. And so I went up there and I was like, you know what? This speech is hard. And then everybody was like, tell me about it. It's really just being able to separate the emotion and the analysis after the fact. And I can just build on that. What lessons can you take from it?
You said that, maybe if you bomb the thing, it's not worth it. But I see a silver lining in that too. If you go pitch for the first time and you completely bomb and you do terrible and embarrass yourself, you still learned something. You didn't die.
Yeah.
The reason that public speaking is so difficult for people is because there's a social evolution, a social acceptance thing that needs to happen. Being cut off from the tribe feels like death. And so you're so exposed up there. That's why people are so afraid to get in front of people and talk. And so even if you fail at something, you still like, well, nothing bad happened. Like it was embarrassing. Or maybe I learned I need to plan better because I didn't prepare ahead of time or whatever, but you didn't die. There's somebody I saw the other day where they were talking about getting over fear and they said, okay, here's your exercise. Go to a coffee shop and ask the barista for a discount. So someone's like, yeah, I did it. I asked the person for a discount and they were a little confused because I said I was doing it as part of this class, but it was fine. You know what? I did it and I didn't die. You could bomb the first one. You can be slightly better at the second, but all of those, you're getting better at again, the public speaking is kind of the context here, but that could go for a lot of different things. That could go for an investor meeting or something. And you're like, I didn't sell the story very well. Okay, well, now you know to go work on it. You got some feedback on what doesn't make sense. There's always something you can learn.
I've noticed that about the three of us, that we all seem to be able to find the silver lining, which is why we wanted to do this topic, I think. This is maybe part of the key components that form a resilient entrepreneur.
100%.
So yeah, I'm just curious, do you both see yourselves as glass half full kind of person? Is that how you perceive yourself? Is that you're maybe a little overly optimistic sometimes? Or do you see yourself as a realist or a pessimist?
Yeah, I don't think I'm overly optimistic, and I don't even like the concept of the glass half full. Optimism is different to me. We should define it then. So to me, an optimist is just someone that's like, oh, it'll work out. I see optimism as naive. I don't see this as optimism. I see this as being realistic based on prior experience and just an understanding of human behavior. Something happens, there's always something to learn because that's how life works. You're on this journey. So it's being realistic with a bent towards learning and growing and developing and finding ways to do that in a way that's self-encouraging instead of self-defeating. To me, that's not the same as optimism.
I think that some people would say they're realist based on statistics and facts and the science. By looking at things statistically, all three of us are going to face a lot of barriers to getting funding, VC funding in particular. I think we'd have a 1 to 5% chance or something in any room with any VC. All the statistics about businesses failing, that has never stopped any of us from doing what we're doing. And I looked it up. The National Institute of Mental Health says that the public speaking is more feared than death.
Yeah.
According to the survey, right? And all three of us would say, no, it's like an opportunity for growth. Just go do it. You'll be fine.
And I want to highlight really quick for people who are like, there's no way, not me. I'm an introvert. I actually do really well at public speaking, but it's because I've done enough of it. It's a practice thing. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert. It doesn't matter if you're the kind of person that is fine never leaving your house, which I am. You can still learn to present well, even if that's not something that you love doing. If you have a business or a concept or an idea that you're passionate about, you just need to lean into that and into your expertise and knowing that you're providing something of value, and then just tell people that. That's literally
Yeah.
all that it is, and you don't have to overcomplicate it. You do have to learn how to present it well, but you can do that, and you just take the next day off to decompress, you know? But it's doable. Anybody can learn to do that.
That's such a big part of it is, like you said, lean into your expertise. I think one of the pieces of feedback I got when I was going on a pitching circuit was some guy told me, assume whenever you're pitching the most about whatever you're talking about. And that was like removing Atlas, Boulder, The Rock, or whatever. I do know the most about this. And then it just gives you the whole power stance thing. Like you stand with your arms, whatever. It just gives you a sense of confidence. I think personally for myself, that helped remove a lot of the nervousness about being able to do public speaking.
It's so funny we're talking about public speaking. Finding the silver linings in public speaking. Huh. I wonder where we went this direction. With that, cheat code for public speaking is if you are nervous, you reframe your nervousness as excitement. It's the same kind of emotion. So if you're about to walk out on a stage and you are incredibly nervous and shaking, instead of being like, oh man, I'm so nervous, I'm excited. I get out there and I get to present my business, and you completely reframe the emotion. It's the same kind of emotion, but you reframe it in your mind and then you channel it.
I
And
tried to do that the last time I did public speaking, and my body still was like, I'm so excited. I'm going to throw up in front of everyone.
I need
man, that is a
everyone to
lot of
see how
excitement.
excited I am.
Yeah, they're all going to see my excitement in about 10 minutes.
So maybe pair that with an anti-nausea medication. No, I don't
What
know.
I did, it was 2,000 people, more than I'd ever spoken in front of. And the last time I'd done anything like that, it was maybe 500 people, and I really did almost throw up, I think.
Was this
So
a social ventures thing that you did?
yeah. So
That was great. I saw the
thank you.
video. That turned out great.
So what I did was a couple things. I took a ice cold shower right before I
Neat.
got dressed to go, and I did that only because I hadn't slept the night before. And I was like, how do I wake myself up? But also, I think resets your vagus nerve, which is where your fight or flight response comes from. And it gives you a lot of dopamine and adrenaline and makes you feel amazing, actually. So I did that. And then I visualized over and over again myself.
Yep.
Because I realized I had been visualizing myself for 2 weeks, getting on stage and throwing up in front of everyone. So I was like, how about we don't do that? How about I visualize confidence and I walk out in front of everyone and I go, good morning. And it's like, I'm radiating confidence and I just easily crush it. And that's exactly what happened. And I ended like to the second almost at the 10-minute mark when I was supposed to. I don't know how it happened. I channeled something. But I learned from that. Didn't die. Didn't throw up. And
Yeah.
I felt amazing afterward to such a degree that now I'm looking for more speaking opportunities because it was actually fun once I got through it.
Mm.
And it taught my body that I will not throw up or die and humiliate myself and be excommunicated and all the things my nervous system is afraid of. So my whole life, I've also, like you were saying, Sarah, learned to find the good in things and throwing myself in head first to things that are terrifying because I do believe that I will learn something, I'll grow, and I'll train myself that actually I didn't die. Because that's what your body's trying to tell you. And so you just go do it and then you don't die. And then you become this person that everyone's like, oh my God, I don't know how they do all those things. We do it scared and probably with a little bit of vomit, like, or whatever, stress, sweat. And we just do it anyway and get up on stage and say, I'm scared. This is hard. And people love it.
I think that speaks to this idea, how you're kind of framing, both you and Sarah, is control. There's a sense of controlling the situation to the best of your ability. Obviously, it can be difficult if you're nervous, but like you said, reframe from nervousness to excitement, bursting at the seams to be able to talk about something, just being able to control it. So I think there are things that people can do realistically to control the way that things are going. If there's something going south, you can redirect how things are going. And I think having that sense of control gives you better capacities to address and actually see the silver lining sometimes. Because if you're constantly in this state, woe is me, everything sucks, I'm always getting the short stick, the cobbler's kid. If you're always feeling like that, you're going to always be in that state. But if you can control how you're perceiving your emotions, how you're perceiving the event, this can be applied in a multitude of situations. If a bad deal, bad client engagement, or even career exploration. Like I have a friend who's going through a bit of career exploration. Like, oh, I went and got a degree in computer science, and everybody and their mom has a computer science degree. What am I going to do now? And I was like, there's a tremendous opportunity where you can lean away from conventional tech jobs. Where is big data and computer science not being applied? So I think the question I have for both of you is, what are some early warning signs that you've devised in your business and professional life that let you know things are going south, that allow you to wake up, to re-grab the wheel?
Man, a lot of it is pattern recognition.
Mhm.
So the more that you do something, the more you will pick up on things. So I feel like a lot of times when I talk about red flags with clients or just prospects that you're having a conversation, you're like, oof, this is not gonna be a good client. Those things are sometimes hard to put into words because you just get a vibe or a sense of something that's off. So a lot of it's just doing the thing, just doing the
Mhm.
thing and being intentional and being mindful, and you'll pick up on stuff over time. And then you can kind of codify that into your system. So I don't know if I have a good example of codifying this per se, but we're very consulting driven. So I run a website agency, but really what I do is like business strategy and tech consulting.
Mhm.
And you come to us and you say what you need or you think you need, and I will tell you what you actually need. So one of our rules is that our clients have to be people that are wanting to work with an expert and partner, collaborate on this thing. So if someone comes in and they are very clearly the kind of person that wants to direct everything and
Mhm.
tell you what to do, I don't work with those people. I will straight up be like, "We're not a good fit. We're too booked. Sorry. Booked out. Don't have any room for you." I won't work with them. I just won't do it because that's not what we do. If you wanna go boss somebody around, by all means do that. Your results aren't gonna be great because 'cause you're not an expert in marketing or web design or tech or whatever the thing is. And if I have clients with those expertise things, it's still a collaboration, right? Tell me where you're trying to go, and I will help you get there. But that's one of the things that's a red flag to me. If someone comes in and tries to drive the whole conversation, you don't respect the expert. And you're also not gonna respect the time, and you're also not gonna respect the bill that comes due because you're not
Mhm.
gonna pay that because you don't
Such a good
there's
point.
all these things that I've seen happen so many times. So I would say pattern recognition is really, really big. So pay attention to the common denominators. If you work with clients and you're like, "Man, this client did this again. It was the same thing with what was common between those?" In the beginning, that will be harder to pick up on, but the more you do stuff, the more you'll pick up on that. Take notes. Maybe sit down ahead of time and write out what is the ideal situation. You can do a pre-mortem for stuff too. So you don't have to wait till things go wrong. If you have a big project that's stressing you out and you're like, man, this is going to be difficult, sit down and write out a list of everything that could go wrong, do a pre-mortem of things, and then go, okay, if this goes wrong, how do I prevent it from going wrong ahead of time? So you can work through a big project before any of that stuff happens and then avert most of the stuff.
Yeah, and I would say include in your pre-mortem how you're feeling in your gut and
Yes.
take stock of that. And in the beginning, when you're trying to make intuitive decisions about things like hiring or partners or other business decisions that are pretty impactful, you won't necessarily trust your gut because this is all new, but you'll learn pretty quickly, oh, my gut told me not to hire that person and I did it anyway. And I know now what that feels like and I'm going to listen next time. For me, even after 20 years in business, there's still things that are just not intuitive to me because I am pretty optimistic. I see the good in people. So something that helped me was reading Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, which is a pretty intense book that takes you through a lot of different historical references to people who gained and kept power, mostly through really horrible means. Um,
It's
read it
kind of
if you want to
horrible
be
advice.
terrible. If someone reads it and says it was good advice, watch out for that person. But I read it being like, God, this is depressing. And then realized it's such a good resource for, oh, this is how some people think business works. This is how some people move through the world. And they really believe it's like dog eat dog. I'm more like, it's a dog eat dog world. And so there's these two types of people. And if you're like me, you really have to learn how to watch out for the dog eat dog people because You don't see them coming. And they believe that taking you down is just a part of what it means to survive. For instance, I never understood the rule of not telling people about your wins because I felt so grateful to be part of an entrepreneurial community and finally identify with that. Oh, I'm part of this crazy group of people. That's why I'm like this. And I feel so seen and I want to share. And look at my new office. I feel so excited and I want to share my excitement. Or look at, I just hired my first employee and learned partly through experience, but partly through reading this book that some people really hate to see other people win. You will attract negative energy by doing that every time, unfortunately. And you'll attract people, even as clients or employees or network people, friends, supposed friends, who actually, they're there for a variety of negative reasons that have to do with your success or the money that you're making and nothing to do with you or your values. So yeah, reading and listening to other people's stories has also helped me with that pattern recognition that Sarah was talking about, because I never in a million years would have intuited that it's bad to be vulnerable and share your feelings with people.
It's a little bit of a tangent, but one thing about that, there are some people who will have a tendency to think that something's wrong with them or they did something wrong. And that is not the case. So often people are projecting their insecurities onto you. So if you share a win and someone in your life is trying to tear you down, that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with them. That is really important to understand. Move on, keep grinding, just go do the thing and ignore
Mhm.
the people that do that. Especially if you are a founder, if you are in some entrepreneurial capacity and you've got a friend that works full-time job or they have all these dreams that haven't been realized or they can't take action on what they actually care about and they see you doing that, that really threatens people. And it's frustrating to me to see that happen. And then the person be like, man, my best friend's not talking to me and I don't know what I did. It's not you, man. It's not you.
Oh, that's
So
so
it's important to
true.
understand these. You have to understand these things so that you can recognize it and not internalize it because it can really hamper you. Reading the 48 Laws of Power is like sneaking into a secret club meeting for evil business
It
owners.
is.
Putting a
That's
cup
literally
on the
what it feels
door.
like. You
Mhm.
feel gross. You have to take a shower after reading that book. It is gross.
And not everyone thinks that.
Yeah. I read it and it gave me a lot of context. Like you're saying, Lee, to the
Yeah.
way that a lot of people are there. But there are certain things I think that could be leveraged from some of those ideologies in there. But I've also talked to people who said it's just a prison survival guide. So
Mhm.
it really depends on the environment. There are certain business environments that are just simply cutthroat. There's no regard for anyone's feelings. You get trampled. Like I said, it's a stepping stone on the way um, to whatever it is that they're trying to do. And I think one of the things along the lines of being able to share your wins and things that are going on that I've kind of experienced is I would, in some of the things that I've been involved in, maybe even nonprofits, I would look at something like, oh, I can't tell someone about a grant opportunity that I'm going after because they might get it. Most of the time in a nonprofit, there are gazillion people working on the same problem that's not going to be solved anytime soon. So if one
Yeah.
more person puts out their hand and is trying to help get it done, by all means, like I reached out to somebody, I was like, oh, there's this grant thing. And at first I was thinking, I was like, oh, let me be super cryptic and secret. I'm looking at a thing. You have any advice on it? What's the thing? It's the guy, he has money. I'm just looking at it. What do you
Ugh.
think? They're like, I need more to go on than that. And I was like, whatever. If this guy goes out and gets it, then by all means, they're gonna go address food scarcity, food insecurity, or whatever. Bravo. I'll be the person in the front row and I can applaud their efforts. I think as we look at silver linings, finding them, and how we navigate, I'd be curious to hear what is your takeaway from how you've approached silver linings in the past. I'll go first. You always have an opportunity to learn, whether it's in favor or whether it's in misfortune. I think that there's an opportunity for you to be able to get some insight from something that's happened. Whatever happens, that should be one of the things that you try to do. Obviously, after the dust is settled, get what you can learn and what you can benefit from. That would be my takeaway.
I agree with that. I'm all about learning and growth and personal development. For me, it's always the learning thing. The other thing I would add is it helps you determine the direction of where you go next because you can't just sit down and build out a perfect plan or decide your journey ahead of time. That's just not how things work. So if you see the setbacks as being these guardrails and this thing just happened, it's going to knock you back the other direction. Maybe that's the direction you need to go. If you have a certain type of client that you're working with and things just keep going wrong and you have all these disasters, maybe you're working with the wrong kind of clients. Or you have a product offering that is just draining you and there's a final straw of something that is a disaster with it. Maybe this is not a product I should be offering. So all these things add up to create this roadmap. You have to do the things to learn to keep moving. So whatever the setback is, it's going to help you pick a direction, whether that's we need stricter security procedures around this particular thing so this doesn't happen again, or we're going to eliminate this thing entirely and move over here.
I would say my biggest takeaway is there's a difference between optimism and finding the silver lining in things that are truly a cloud with a silver lining, like the traditional sense of that was difficult or horrible, but look at this wonderful thing that came out of it, like childbirth and a baby, right? Traditional kind of concept versus something where you're painting it to be something that it's not. Like, I think the biggest thing that jumps out for me is a toxic relationship that you put too much positivity on to keep it going. Or that can even be in business too. Something that should have died a long time ago and you're just keeping it on life support because you can't stand the idea of shutting it down and moving on to the next thing. It's just too painful and you're putting the pain off. You're putting a breakup off, whatever it is. And I'm guilty of this. I've mostly done this in my personal life. I've been pretty good about shutting businesses down when it's time to just move on. But in my personal life, I am what you call, I'm just a ride or die and I might die. So in the past, I would stay with someone way past when I should have, when it was toxic or abusive or whatever, because I just had this value that was like, I see the good in them and I see what they're trying to do. And the biggest thing that I learned about how to get out of that kind of situation that sometimes is not redeemable is that cognitive distortions and cognitive dissonance will make you crazy. This is all about coming back to your gut and using that to make these business decisions and understanding everything's got a little bit of a cloud and a little bit of a silver lining. This is the good decision for me and this is where my energy should be, versus the more that I do this or the more that I pursue this, the more dissonant everything feels. And yes, there's a silver lining to it, but it's not even worth it anymore. It's not good for me. It's not good for my health. So for me, I think the biggest takeaway is like, it's important to be a resilient founder that can find the silver lining in a very difficult place in a down economy when no one believes in your vision but you. That's an important part of resilience. But then being able to see the other side of that and say, but if I keep doing this, I'm going to go crazy. So it's time to stop. Time to move on. And just knowing what that line is for you and honoring that is how you can holistically approach this concept and use it to your benefit.
Yeah, being able to look at everything from a holistic standpoint. I think we can sometimes get locked in to a very singular focus, but I think we have to give everything consideration with all factors. And there are certain things, obviously, that are non-negotiable, but to a certain degree, as we're talking about business and the opportunity to find a silver lining, something that just could work out or just gives you an insight that you didn't expect, because that's all sometimes the silver lining is. You just get information you didn't anticipate. So I think being able to leverage the holistic approach, consider your business happenings and things that you go through is very important.
We'd love to hear from our listeners if you have had a situation where it was a disaster, but you found a silver lining. So reach out and drop us a comment or DM. We'd love to hear from you.
And make sure to subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is.
Until next time, folks, we
all
all
We all have
problems.
problems.